Hi, fourth graders. It's Mr. Holt, obviously. I've got my roller coaster here kind of in front of me. There's the start of it. It comes on down and just ends. It is just a bit of an uphill at the beginning and then a long downhill, and then it is flat, and then the car or cart that I'm using and pretending it's got the people on it all going woohoo or whatever is this blue ball. But this is my roller coaster. I'm going to get it going here in a second, and as I do, as I had kind of challenged you to do if you were able to make a roller coaster, is to explain or use a couple of the terms that we had talked about in our roller coaster unit and in our waves and energy unit as you do so. A lot of the stuff we did with energy, it's such a broad term, and it has so many different parts of it. We talked a lot about where we get our energy from, what kinds of forms of energy and kinds of energy there are, how we use it, and just some of the principles of energy. But then we kind of transition from there into specifically forces and motion, and Newton's first law of motion, Newton's second law of motion, Newton's third law of motion, and that's more of the roller coaster stuff. Right before the school closures happened, we were kind of finishing that roller coasters packet, and then we were going to build roller coasters in class. Mr. Ferguson and I have all the materials there to do so. But we weren't able to do so, but we can hopefully make a small one at home or a big elaborate one if you choose to or can. But I'm going to do so now and just kind of show you my roller coaster the kids and I put together. We even have some spectators, and the mess of stuff there is part of some of the stuff I'm going to use in a moment as part of the challenge to get the car to slow down after its first go. So we'll watch it on its first go. I'm choosing to start it here on this slight uphill. If I just put the ball there, it's not magically going to go up the incline and then down the roller coaster. It's just not going to do so. It has gravity pulling it straight down towards the center of the earth, so there's some forces already acting on it, and it's just sitting there. For it to be able to roll up the incline, I have to provide some force. As I'm providing it force, that's a little bit of that Newton's second law of motion. If I give it a lot of force, it's going to go faster. If I barely give it force, if I push it just barely, then I'm giving it less force, it's not going to go as fast or as far. In fact, because it's on an uphill and gravity is a force pulling on it, remember a force is any push or pull, it's the definition of force, it already has gravity wanting to bring it back down this incline. So for it to go up, I have to give it force. How much force I give it will determine how fast it goes. Also, the mass of the object, the mass of the blue ball, is part of that equation. So later in high school physics, when you're talking about Newton's second law of motion, it's not just that a force is what gets it to go. It will actually, you'll do the calculations based on how much force was applied, how much mass the object has. You can do all sorts of equations to find out how far it's going to go and some of those things. So I'm going to provide some force. It's going to go up the incline, and now it's going to go down the roller coaster right at the top of the hill. There we are. Right at the top of the hill is when it has the most potential energy, because right now if I let it go, it's going to come back, and it's going to come back a little bit faster than it would if I only started it like right here. It'll come back a little bit, but when it's at the top of the hill, it has the most potential energy to roll backwards, or the most potential energy to finally roll and go down the roller coaster. So I'm providing force, I'm getting it to the top of the hill, that's where it has the most potential energy, and as soon as I go over that black line there, it's going to have more and more kinetic energy as it gains speed going down the hill. Once it has that kinetic energy, Newton's first law of motion, which talks about inertia, the ball's going to want to continue to go, and we're going to see that. It's not just going to stop when it gets to the bottom, even though it's got some gravity acting on it. It's got a force pulling it towards the center of the earth. It's not just going to stop just because. It either needs enough friction to slow it down or make it stop, which it's not going to have a lot right now. This cardboard that I'm using doesn't have a lot of friction, and my hardwood floor does not have a lot of friction, so the ball's going to go pretty far, probably into my daughter's bedroom. And that's Newton's first law of motion, that an object in motion wants to stay in motion, or an object at rest wants to stay at rest. it's inertia. Once it gets going, it's going to want to keep going until enough forces get it to stop. So here we go. More and more force, more potential energy, lots of kinetic energy, not much friction. Finally came to a stop because it hit the door. So you saw the ball, well, hopefully you saw the ball. I know this video is, the production is not particularly great. Pretty low budget, pretty low quality video here. But the ball went down the roller coaster, had a lot of kinetic energy, got to the bottom, didn't just stop just because it needed some forces to get it to stop, either enough friction or enough gravity, or if it came to a complete stop because it ran into an object, which it eventually did. It hit the door to my daughter's bedroom and came to a stop. What I've done, and this was the challenge once you built the roller coaster and checked out some of those different terms that we had talked about and put them to work. We did so with the spool racer and some other experiments too. We saw those things at work, but we didn't quite get to the roller coasters. The challenge is, now that you've built your roller coaster, your insurance company tells you that it's too dangerous. It goes too fast when it gets to the flat, never really comes to a stop, unless you built yours so that it did, and that's awesome. But mine, it went too fast. It's too dangerous. The people are at risk when they go on this roller coaster. So, if you think about how much money it probably takes to build a roller coaster, it's probably in the hundreds of thousands or millions. It's going to be too expensive to just make changes to my roller coaster. I've already built it. It was complete. The project was done. Then the insurance company said, no, that's too dangerous. You got to find a way to get it to slow down. How can I do that? Can't rebuild it. Can't change the structure. How can I get it to slow down? I'm going to let you pause there for a minute maybe and kind of think about it if you didn't already do this yourself. Okay, the way to get it to slow down, it's one of the terms we've gone over, is friction, or at least that's one way. So to my roller coaster, I've now included some different materials. The ball still goes, I've checked this out, the ball still goes across that roller coaster, and it still goes across the structure. It still works, it doesn't jump off, nothing crazy really happens, but because I put those towels down and one brush, it rubs, the ball rubs as it goes by. Again, doesn't make it come to a sudden halt where people are going to get injured, pretend people. It just slows it down enough that the friction, the ball just travels very slowly as it gets to that material, or slower, and then slower and slower. And as it rubs the brush on the one side and one more towel, it'll hopefully come to a stop right at the end of the towel. It did when I practiced it. Now that we're making the video, of course, it probably won't, but we will see. So here it goes.